pop up in a moment. Obviously, it'll be accompanied by drilling sounds in the background, but never mind. Okay, so we are recording. That's brilliant. So thanks for joining us today for I guess it's the first true show and tell for the next stage of the How Busy Is Toon project. We did have a show and tell a few months ago, and then we also had the election period, so it was all a little bit quiet. But rest assured, we were doing lots of work in the background, and hopefully today you'll hear a little bit more about that. David, do you want to flick on to the slide? I guess just as a bit of a reminder, really, about what we're trying to do in the phase 2 work. So many of you will be familiar with How Busy Is Toon, the product that we developed to help people feel safe and return to the city centre by using and sharing pedestrian information and also information on car parks and how busy they are. Had a really good response to How Busy Is Toon, and it led us to have further questions about, well, what more can we do with citizen-centred data sharing, and what are the data sets, what are the use cases, what are the user needs. And so it's great that we were able to work with MHCLG as part of their continuous funding model through the digital fund to start up phase 2. And I guess the objectives of phase 2 of the work are that we continue to continue to promote the existing How Busy Is Toon product across a wider geography, and you'll hear a little bit about that later on in the presentation. And then, but included in that is producing a guide that allows other councils to create their own version of How Busy Is Toon as well. But actually, we also wanted to get back into some of those other use cases, other user needs, but I guess more loosely related to safe travel and transport. And what do we do with that kind of data? What are the user needs around that? Next slide, please, David. And the next one.
The next one.
Yeah. So the process for today is that David, I'll hand over to David and put myself on mute, and he'll be able to share the current user research that we've done in relation to those perhaps new user needs around travel and transport data. We'll also then reflect a bit about what we've learned from the whole sort of How Busy Is Toon project, and look at how other people are getting on with trying to adopt the original How Busy Is Toon product and the next steps as well. So David, over to you.
Thanks very much, Jenny. Hello, everyone. I'm David. I'm a researcher from Hedgehog Lab. I'm joined today by my colleague Hannah Veltrup, who is also a researcher at Hedgehog Lab. And we've been working with the guys on this project for some time now. And what we're going to go through today, as Jenny mentioned, is kind of an overall whistle-stop tour of the research from phase 2 of this project. So I'm going to hand over to Hannah so she can talk about how we approach this. So away you go, Hannah.
Brilliant, thanks. Hi everyone. Yeah, let me talk you through of what we've been up to in the last few weeks. So essentially we knew from phase 1 that there have been some issues with public transport, and people had some concerns. So we really started this phase of focusing on that part. So we wanted to really explore what needs people have in relation to returning to their pre-pandemic public transport choices, but also to explore what positive changes they have made since the start of the pandemic and see of how we could potentially work on that. To do so, we used a 3-stage research approach to capture both qualitative and quantitative data. So we prepared a survey, we did some face-to-face interviews, and we did something that we call Take Us on a Journey, where people take their camera or smartphones with them and show us what's going on in the world and how their journey works. So who did we talk to? So we created a survey which in total reached 315 people, and we did use different sources. So there was SurveyMonkey, which gave us access to people all across the UK, and we got 252 responses from there. Then we also shared it personally via our own networks, which gained us 46 responses. And then we also had the fortunate sort of lucky behavior that we were able to share with the Nexus Insights panel, which also gave us 16 responses. So overall, a very broad response field. And yeah, that gave us, as you can see here, responses from all across the UK. The reason Northeast is slightly higher than everyone else is due to our own networks and the Nexus panel, which gave us slightly more skewed data there. But otherwise, we had a good proportion everywhere. Similarly, with generation cohort, we spoke from people born 1996 up to 1997 plus, so all these 5 generations. But similar like last time, we did not sort of break down the data by generation because we noticed they can vastly differ. People within the same generation can vastly feel differently about COVID. So again, we similar like before, we went on mindsets. Also good to know is that we spoke to people with a variety of needs. So as you can see, a good third of our cohort actually had also either physical or mental health needs, so having a bit more idea about accessibility needs there as well. Right, as we said, we don't just do a survey, we also spoke to people and real life people to get their idea. So we had Zoom conversations and again got information and videos from people's journeys. And here's one of the examples as well of the kind of information that we received, one of many, of course.
Another thing which has changed now, I always used to walk anyway, but it's quite a busy road, and obviously this new cycle lane never used to be there, so I used to be able to basically just concern myself with the cars when it came to actually crossing the road, but now I have to look out for cyclists instead, so it basically just adds another layer of small inconvenience if you are a pedestrian. There's the main traffic lights here as well, that now rather than being a one-stop process, they're a double-stop process, so it just slows everything down a little bit.
Brilliant. Yeah, so that's one of the several videos that we got, just people documenting their journey and commenting on what they've noticed while walking as a pedestrian, for example, through London. So what else we explored was understanding what was people's primary mode of transport before the pandemic, what is it now, and why have they chosen the mode of transport that they have, what are they going to use once the pandemic is over, but also understanding how satisfied they are currently with their primary mode of transport, what they feel that they need to plan their journeys, but also how does the environment, what does that make about, like how much does that direct people's thoughts or influence people's choices. And what we discovered was that people feel feeling safe in public transport is still something that is a key issue. People are still very much worried while we're still struggling with COVID-19. People have issues also that we probably would have seen before COVID, which is around planning, reliability, pricing, infrastructure. All of these still are definitely very much on people's minds. However, also the person's location definitely influences which mode of transport they choose. And finally, we noticed that people have certainly upped their game and when it comes to active travel during the COVID pandemic right now. But interestingly, it's also looking to continue to be more people looking to use active travel after the pandemic compared to before, though it is a decrease from the current situation, which was certainly very interesting to know from our end. Then coming to one of the themes, so as I mentioned, public transport safety was a big issue. And what we noticed here is that there is certainly discrepancy between people who are currently still using public transport and people who haven't. And this seems like there might be still really much of an issue with PR within public transportation. We obviously appreciate public transport has had a very tough time over the past 12 months, given negative media reports around safety and behavior, which now has actually become a key driver in people's sort of minds who might not actively been using public transport. However, those who have actually kept using it felt that they're quite happy and happy to use it and feel quite safe. And let us show us some footage of giving you some ideas of why that is, and also, yeah, of the journeys themselves.
I feel safe going on the bus because I don't let loads of people on. One person to 2 seats sort of thing. Once those seats are full, the driver say I'm full. I do feel safe I mean, if there was a lot of people on, I probably wouldn't get on the bus. I would wait for the next one. I've been walking, like, say, from where I live down to Gateshead, but I get the bus back up because obviously I'm carrying shopping. No, but I do feel safe on it. As I say, it's just a case of checking that there's not too many on. You feel safe getting on it. Well, I think everybody was a bit scared at first. But then we had loads of things saying, oh, the buses are clean, they're getting sanitised every day and all that. But I would walk down but when the pandemic first started, there was only maybe half a dozen people on a double-decker bus. So I still felt safe getting the bus back up home for shopping.
Mind the gap between the train and the platform.
This is Notting Hill Gate. The rear two doors will not open here. Please use other doors.
Hannah, you're on mute.
Sorry, thank you. So as you could see, people who have been using it still during the pandemic are very happy. And given the second footage with the empty tube, you also understand that there's every reason to feel safe because there are not that many as you might usually expect during rush hour in London pre-pandemic. But here, for example, a response of a Gen X respondent who still says that they're continue to use their car, or they are currently using their car because they are very concerned about being around many people potentially on public transport. And then one of them may have COVID and they catch it themselves. But we also have I'm more concerned with my own safety than the environment, for example. So showing, again, safety matters first from a baby boomer respondent. And we also have some footage for you here again about the reasons of why they might not feel safe right now on public transport.
So yeah, I'm very nervous about using public transport again, and I'm not really sure, So for me, it's about passing it on. Even if you have the vaccine, how much of a risk is that still? Because particularly my husband's parents are, they're in their late 80s, and well, I just can't even comprehend of when you're thinking about risk, and you think, well, how likely is it? But also, what are the consequences? Well, the consequences are really bad if I was the person to finish on my parents-in-law. Do you know what I mean? So it doesn't matter if the risk has to be really, really low before I would start thinking, oh, okay, that's the risk I'm prepared to take. So yeah, I don't know if I'm just particularly paranoid or whatever, but.
Brilliant, yes. As you can see, this is the two realities that we're facing. But I'll now pass on to my colleague David, who will run you through the rest of our findings.
Fantastic. So I think obviously we know that safety when it comes to using public transport is a key issue and a theme that's come up both in this round of research and in the first phase. But another theme that cropped up a lot was around infrastructure and the choices that people can actually make depending upon where they are. And I think the answer to this question around location is yes, it definitely impacts your choices. Whether that's to do with kind of the infrastructure that's available in your area, the weather playing a part on the choices that you make, potentially even apps that are available to you to allow you to plan, and also if you have any mobility issues. In the survey that we did, we can see that London was the only area of the UK that chose public transport as the most popular mode of primary travel. The next clip that I'm going to show you is from one of our respondents who is from the north but lives in London right now, and he talks about the differences in services and his experience.
I do take the metro, and again, here I live about sort of 5-10 minute walk away from the metro station here, but because I'm not always here, because when I do come here, I move back into my parents' house. If I do need to go into the city centre, then I'll just tag along with my dad in the car. Again, I wouldn't take a bus just because I don't actually know how the bus system works here, and it's quite expensive, and again, it's just a bit slow. So it would either be take a lift in, or I would take the metro in.
If we look outside of the London area and specifically at car usage, as a primary mode of travel, it was most popular in Wales. with 89% who surveyed selected this option. This image here is from Cardiff, and some of what Cardiff Council have been doing is quite radical in terms of to cut congestion in the city. They're going as far as kind of talking to businesses about changing working hours. And when talking about public transport, interestingly, the council in Cardiff said the public transport infrastructure was not fit for purpose because it was built for 200,000 people, but needs to cope with the city's 335,000 population, as well as over 100,000 daily commuters. So you can see here why there might be such a discrepancy between, London versus the rest of the UK. And there are a number of variables that we discovered in the research that make it tricky for people to navigate public transport in a way that's easy for them and convenient. And these were problems that existed before COVID-19, and they haven't gone anywhere. And they're not really that easy to solve without input from multiple organisations all sharing data with one common objective. The next clip that I'm going to show you is from one of our respondents talking about her experience of using the local bus service.
Really fascinated by the fact that the vast majority of the people in the queue all have bus passes because we're over 60 or 65 or whatever it is. And I thought, yeah, because you don't have to think about any of this. You just get on the bus, wave your bus pass, and you don't worry about, are you getting on the right bus company's bus on the way home and have you got the right timetable? Because that was the other thing. The bus companies don't give you they don't tell you on their timetable that somebody else is running that bus. I actually had to go to a third-party website to find that out, and because my friend kept saying, "Oh, you have to be careful." I was like, "Well, it doesn't say anything on their website, so that can't be a thing." And then when I went to this third-party website, it told me the name of the bus company. I just thought, "What is that about? Why do I have to work so hard to find that out?" That's crazy.
So you can see there from our respondent talking that it's not just as easy as being able to get on the bus in some parts of the UK. So another theme that cropped up in our research was around sustainability, and we spent some time talking to people about what that means to them when it comes to travel, and also we've looked at how active travel in terms of walking and cycling is on the rise since the pandemic began. And I guess in terms of sustainability, whilst we are thinking about it right now in the world that we're in right now, it's not really top of people's agenda. I guess in sort of psychology terms, the concept of climate change and what it means to us is still quite abstract to many people. We understand that it's bad and that it feels far away. I guess a common analogy is when smokers see cigarette packets and the warnings and the damage that it does. So you would think seeing what happens should cause a behaviour change, but it doesn't. And I guess people can only take up more sustainable options for travel if they are available to them. So we need infrastructure for good cycle lanes, cycle schemes where people can rent if they don't own bikes, e-scooters, that type of thing. And people can only make sustainable decisions if they've got these options available to them. Our survey did indicate that there will be a longer term increase in people taking up active travel as their primary mode of transport post the pandemic. But for many people, there's quite a lot of perceived barriers in the way for this to become a widespread norm. And obviously, as we've talked about throughout this, location dictates whether these things are possible. We've got another clip here from one of our respondents talking about kind of an issue they have with cycling.
I am paranoid about locking my bike up in London because it's not a super expensive bike, but it's not a cheap bike either. So I just don't feel safe locking it up in public because you just see so many bikes with wheels missing, or it's just the frame that's been left, and you use the best bike locks. But if someone wants to steal your bike, they'll find a way to steal it.
Do you see there, even in London, where there is quite a lot in terms of initiatives for getting people into cycles, there's still a barrier that's stopping people potentially doing that. And we've got another photo here that was captured by one of our respondents when they made their journey into the city centre, where they're just asking, where do you even leave kind of your bike in a safe space? It should also be noted that in our research, we did delve into the health and well-being angle of active travel. We know from the phase 1 research that mental health has been impacted somewhat by the COVID-19 pandemic. And so we talked about kind of active travel and the impact it could have and how it could support us coming through the pandemic and out the other side. And generally, people are aware of the benefits. People know that swapping the bus for cycling or walking is going to help. And we know that there are platforms out there already that help people to do this. even kind of recording walks, step counters, that type of thing. So from the research phase, we gathered all of these themes, and we looked at all of the evidence, and we began what essentially was an extended discovery phase. We looked at what we felt were the critical user needs. We then started to look at what data was available to us that we could use. And then we took another look at understanding the market landscape. Collectively as a team, we went through various design exercises using Miro, which is a digital whiteboard. As I mentioned, we looked at kind of the user needs again. We started to develop audience mindsets to work out who we were talking to. And then we started to look at actually if we could meet the needs that we've discovered. And we asked ourselves 3 questions through all of this. So is the user need that we've discovered met by somebody else already? Can we improve on this user need? And why does this need still exist? And I guess where we came to in terms of looking at safety as a need, well, we know that more traditional travel operators are releasing tools to help with this need of safety. Go Northeast has an app that allows their customers to see how busy particular buses are. And we also know that a lot of the travel operators, their key messaging in their comms at the moment is around safety and how to keep their customers safe. So this need feels like it's been addressed by various different organizations. Around the infrastructure and planning and being able to understand what bus to get and ticketing options, well, there are a lot of apps that are doing this at the moment. You know, one that stands out to us is Citymapper, which has for some time now been more London-centric, but in the past couple of months has rolled out across the UK, across various different cities. This app does do a lot of what our users were telling us that they needed. However, awareness of this app and other apps that do similar things seems quite low right now. And then finally, when we looked at the kind of the active travel side of things, many of you are probably familiar with Strava. Well, there's a lot of apps that are out there that allow people to record their routes, to suggest their routes, not just cycling, but walking. So we feel like there is already a big community in terms of active travel out there with people utilizing the different tools that are available. So after much discovery and ideation, we arrived at a point where it felt like there was no obvious standout need that's not already being addressed. We can't control the infrastructure needs from pricing and timetables. You know, that's something that's handled by the travel and transport organizations themselves. The lack of data is a barrier to us. So we know that with the planning tools that are out there in certain cities, there is not as much open data as what there potentially is in London. So that's an issue. And then we also explored looking at kind of going niche with this project. So we know that mental health has been impacted. We know obviously that there are wider health issues in the UK to do with obesity. And we know that coming out of the pandemic, people will be wanting to feel better and to feel good and for their lives to feel better. So we looked at, is there a solution here that can kind of bring in the active travel side of things? And we thought maybe there's an overlap between car usage and active travel. So is there a way we can encourage car users to take up cycling? One thing we discovered with in the research that we did was car users liked using their cars because of privacy, they're in control, reliability, and now safety. And this actually, we feel, does overlap with active travel. And we could see a way that we could talk to car users and sell the benefits of active travel. But ultimately where we got to with this is that it wasn't really addressing all of the user needs that we discovered, and actually was a little bit too niche for what we wanted to do and what the objectives of this project is. So right now we're at a point after quite a lot of head scratching and a lot of kind of extended discovery, where we've essentially come at almost kind of a pivot in the road, and we're looking at 2 different solutions. So we've gone back to the drawing board and looking at how Busy Is Toon and what it does. And from the themes that we've discovered, we're looking at a way in which we can make it a much more expansive site with categories that focus on the travel operators. So we give further information about what the travel operators are doing, where you can buy tickets from, what the tools are that they've got out there that are making your life safe. So that would be one area. We'd also then look at the tools that are out there that make people's lives better, such as Citymapper, and we promote these tools and raise awareness of them. We'd also include an element around active travel, so we could promote the health benefits of taking up cycling. We'd obviously bring in this travel safety, so we'd be including elements from the original How Busy Is Toon site around busyness, but we'd also start to talk about kind of how to keep safe going forward outside of the pandemic. And then finally, we know that we wouldn't be able to stop people from driving altogether. That's just not a thing. But actually, could we promote other alternative ways of driving using different driving schemes that are out there? And could we promote and inform people around kind of traffic levels and car park levels and give them alternative routes if the roads are busy? So that's one area that we're looking at the moment. But then the second area is around data sharing. And we know from the research that not every city across the UK shares data the same. And we know that this is a barrier for us to be able to do things for businesses. So we're looking at a platform that primarily focuses around the sharing of data that we've got, but then ultimately would look to encourage other data sharing. So these are the two areas that we're currently looking at. And we are looking at validating these areas. So we're doing kind of almost a mini bit of research right now on these. So I'm just going to pass back across to Jenny, I believe, to pick up the findings so far.
Yeah, thanks, David. And you've alluded to some of this already in that kind of frustratingly, if I'm personally honest, there isn't that killer user need in relation to mobility and travel. And I guess there's, thinking back to where we were on How Busy Is Toon, it was a lot more clear cut about the data that we have. We have this data, we have this user need, we can deliver this and help people and add value. And with this one, I guess we're struggling to find that sort of silver bullet that would meet a load of user needs and that we can actually do something about. And some of that, as David said, is about, the national position on public transport hasn't, it's been very clear around avoiding it. And equally, it's still a bit unclear, the sort of travel safely plan ahead at the minute. But clearly, we didn't feel that we could do something that would potentially be seen as out of kilter with the national guidance. And obviously, other people are already doing some of that already. So again, why would we get into a space where we're duplicating what's already out there? And obviously, if you do build something, then we need the data. And again, this is where it's very different to the original How Busy Is Toon, where we had the data was there. It was more about representing the data in a different way. Whereas with this, it's clear that actually just some of the key bits of data, they're either available but not openly available. So I guess what we're looking for is open real-time data that can then be manipulated in different ways. And the data might well be there, but it's in standalone, different systems, different apps, different websites. And until we have access to things in an open way, we'd be struggling to meet all of those user needs. So as David said, we're back over some of this and trying to unpick and see where we can add the most value. David, would you give up? But I think to be positive, actually, we've reached a much larger and diverse user group than in the previous How Busy Is Toon research. So much more national coverage, which is fantastic. And obviously that has taken more time to go through the process and to find the insights and to understand where those key user needs are. And I guess, I'm happy to say personally that has been something for me that's been a challenge, and you want to get to something, that you want to do something, you want to jump to the solutions, and certainly Egley, our collaboration manager, has been just a godsend really in terms of helping to bring us back to come back to the user needs, come back to thinking about what we've got, and unpick on that. And actually, again, has been a very helpful reminder that the point of this isn't to just sort of dig in and say, well, this is what we're going to deliver and carry on delivering it. It's perfectly okay to pivot based on the user research. So again, a sort of helpful reminder that sometimes things aren't always as you think they're going to be at the start of a project, and that it's completely okay to move in different ways. But we'll come back to you on where we go with the next phase of the project. But I guess just to think back to the original How Busy Is Toon, just a bit of update on where we are with that. So not surprisingly, you can see on the graph there that it sort of mirrors the lockdown period. So some high usage for the reopening of the shops in the Christmas period, and then we have low usage when lockdown's in place, and then a massive spike again for the reopening on April the 12th. And we've had some really positive user feedback again. People have given us some comments about really liking just seeing the images of the city. I think that's been a bit of a surprise to me that people go on and they just like to see how busy town is, but what town's looking like. But we have two ways of collecting feedback on the site. We have the little smiley faces, so the really happy face, the kind of in the middle face, and then a sad face, using a tool called emoji. And we've had feedback from 251 people since April the 12th, which is brilliant, with an average score of 2.7, which is this I guess 90% of people feeling the happiest they can be, which is the happy smiley face, in terms of how useful the site is in giving them confidence and helping them feel confident to return. So I think that's really positive for the people who are using it. They feel very positive about doing that. And then we have a form as well that people can fill in, and certainly some of the responses that we've had, albeit it's a lot fewer number, have made us think about how we respond to issues with the site. So there was somebody had made a comment saying, do you know that the camera isn't working, and so how are we picking up on that? Giving us some ideas about what people like, in that they like the real-time images, they like that it's a clear layout, they like that it's informative, and actually they want more images, they want indoor information, they want cameras where the pubs are, they want cameras where Greggs, the bakers, are, which might be a bit niche to Newcastle. But yeah, and how busy the metro trains are, people want more, and I think that's again sort of gives us confidence in the work that we're doing, that if we're talking about sharing data with people, there is an appetite there. We've just got to find the right data to give to people in the right way. So a couple of people are just going to say a few words now on how they are taking the How Busy Is Toon product and thinking about how they're using it in their areas. So I'd like to introduce Mike, who's the programme manager at Essex and Herts Digital Innovation Zone. I like the little Z on the end of Herts. So I think we might have just added that on your title. But Mike, do you want to just? Yeah. It looks very digital, I think. So, can you just share a little bit with us about what you've been doing and what you're trying to do in Essex and Herts?
Yeah. Thanks, Jenny. So we are a very different proposition to Newcastle City Centre. We're a partnership of 5 districts, which is predominantly very small market towns. But we saw what was being done with How Busy Is Toon, and we're just keen to see how it might be applied in our towns. And we couldn't have been welcomed more warmly by Jenny and the team to explore sharing the project. And similarly, we've had fantastic support from Luke at the Urban Observatory, predominantly because I'm not technical, and some of the questions may well have been obvious in terms of the answers, but we've been able to go back endlessly to ask for sort of guidance and help on how it might apply to our scenario. I think what we found, what I found, the challenge has been, because I think we're doing this from a design of a solution, probably doing it the wrong way around. We've seen the solution and we've brought it back into our organisation to apply it. Not because people don't see the benefit in it. It's been really warmly received by members and officers, but I guess working out how it will work within the way, for example, Epping Forest District Council is set up. Small things like how all my phones are going off. Sorry.
You're a man in demand, Mike.
Yeah. Okay. Simple things like how the website is hosted is different to the way that How Busy Is Toon site is hosted. But I think it's just a case of trying to make it. We haven't gone live yet, but there's we've got teams across Epping Forest District Council who are keen to get it to live. And for us, it's about finding out what each of those need to make it live and sort of working our way through it. And I said, I think we are probably doing it the wrong way around, and we probably have found it smoother if we'd had the idea from the first place, got together and worked out how to make it work in Epping Forest District Council that way. But we are still excited to get it and try and make it live and learn ourselves from our own pilot project, because for us it's one town amongst, I think, about 15 key market towns across the digital innovation zone. So for us, it's just a really exciting thing to be involved in, and hopefully once we get to go live, we can see it go further. I look in envy each time these show and tells come on, because I think, oh, actually, no, I want to do that bit now. Well, I need to get the first bit done first. We're so far back, we're still looking at just the simple footfall and the busyness of the high street. But all the stuff you've been talking about today, it's really interesting, and hopefully we can continue to learn. And just the conversations I was having yesterday, people are already looking ahead. What more can you do with it? And so that there'll be some questions coming back from that soon. But really positive, actually. I'm really pleased that we've got involved, and hopefully we can make it go live.
Brilliant, thanks, Mike. Paul Armstrong, Head of Digital Innovation at North Tyneside, do you want to share a bit about what you've been doing?
Yeah, so we've been doing a huge amount of work over the past couple of months with Jenny and Luke, starting with getting buy-in from our business areas, so looking across CCTV, public safety and comms around how we could start to use the intelligence and the information, and then looking at the technical requirements and the network architecture, so working with Luke around the real nuts and bolts of how do we get access to the cameras, how do we start applying the computer vision, where does the server sit, what does it do, and obviously working through the guides and the documentation and looking at how we would prepare those for applications within different environments. I think very much like Mike, we have the opportunity in North Tyneside to test quite a different use case and quite a different hypothesis. So in North Tyneside, we've looked at a slightly different way of pushing the information out. So we have a slightly different audience in parts of the borough to what you would get in Newcastle in the city centre. So as you would expect, in the summer when people want to be outside and the weather is nice, we have a huge influx of people who want to go to the coast. So that's a slightly different user base, and it's a slightly different use case there. And we, over the last 6 months, we have started pushing more proactively messages on Twitter around busyness at the coast. And coming out of the last lockdown, we shared a tweet that was just a tweet of an image from one of the cameras saying that it was busy down the coast. And it was the most engaged tweet we'd ever had as the council. So it reached 450,000 people, which is more than double the population of North Tyneside is. And so it gives us a slightly different audience, and it allows us to start testing actually for a tourism application, how Busy Is Toon work for us, where it's not about just encouraging people to go to somewhere, but how do we use the data out of that to manage people once they're there? And actually, in some cases, how do we make it about if there are other lockdowns or other restrictions, how do we make it to manage people not going to those areas when they're really busy? So we're focusing really on that and looking next at implementing the kit across all of the cameras, but then looking at that comms strategy of if it's an audience where people aren't going to the same place every day, is it a slightly different comms method that you would use for circulating it to people who are possibly less likely to go to a website because it's a one-off visit that they are coming to the coast. They maybe don't visit the coast on a regular basis. So actually a more proactive comms message would be more appropriate.
Thanks, Paul. I mean, I guess so learning from the experiences that we've had and that Mike's having and that Paul's having, we are building that into an onboarding guide. But actually, having done the first draft of the onboarding, it was almost an overwhelming amount of information. So what we've also tried to put together is a bit of a flow chart to help people navigate actually which elements of the How Busy Is Toon product are most useful or most valuable for your area. Is it actually, do you already have CCTV cameras? Could you share images from those CCTV cameras? Is it that you actually want to do the analytics on pedestrian counting, which is something different? Or is it actually that you just want, I guess, a user-centered designed format for sharing other COVID-related safety information with people, and the way we built in the Google Maps API around bars and restaurants and things like that. So there is quite a lot within the How Busy Is Toon product. So as I say, we're developing that onboarding guidance to help people sort of work out what elements best meet their needs. I think that's probably the last slide. So it's probably a good time to have a think about any questions that you have. And I noticed that Kyle's been quick off the mark and put one in the chat about have we considered or looked at differences in actual footfall, objective measurement of busy and a perceived sense of busy? Yes, I think is the very short answer to that. And I'll let others might want to come in and comment on this as well. It's something that I guess has been a bit of a challenge since the get-go. You know, how busy is busy, and my vision of how busy something is probably not the same as other people's are. And actually that's where we found that even just sharing the images has been really powerful, because then people can make their own decisions about what busy, you know, is it too busy for them or not. And I'm sure Steve will remember back when we looked at the original prototype, we did have a number of conversations, didn't we, about you know, how is it, have we got a certain number in terms of footfall per hour that we would class as busy. And I guess we have got that in terms of the traffic light at the minute. But for me, certainly what I've found has come through consistently is that even if we share an image on Facebook, you know, a snapshot from How Busy Is Toon, you'll get a good mix in the comments of people saying that looks really busy versus, oh, it's dead, there's nobody there. So it's a really tricky one. So yeah, definitely. Steve, do you want to come in?
Yeah, just got a couple of comments. So one, Jenny, is around the overall purpose of the application. So originally it was there basically to inform people in a way to keep them out of the city, right? Because you were trying to stress the fact that it was dangerous to be in. Presumably now you want it to be a dial, right? You want to, once things loosen up, to show people that things aren't busy and encourage them then to travel in order to pick up the economy again, but then have the ability to turn the dial the other way again if things start getting worse. Is that part of the thinking?
I think generally it's about how do we share data with people to make their own decisions about whether they feel confident coming in or not. So if that, whether that's data to say, right, it's quiet enough for me, or to reassure them that it's completely safe to go in, they can see for themselves. I guess.
Isn't there some nudging going on here, Jenny, though? I mean, wouldn't you want, when people go to the site and check how busy it is, if we had a spike in the city and their cases were going up, you'd want to advertise that fact on the page, wouldn't you? Just to give people information?
Well, we have thought about how we embed some more of the sort of government design system messaging around COVID. That is something that we've taken forward at the minute. But I think certainly that a lot of that comes back to, and probably where Paul's point sort of links, is how our the comms teams as well use the tool and the wraparound comms messaging. That the tool shows you the product, shows you how busy it is, you can see for yourself, the rest of it. Actually, probably the wraparound comms on that's, you know, actually it looks very busy, you shouldn't be there if we were in lockdown, or there's not that many people there, feel safe to go in. We did, like I say, we did look at actually should we have had a banner on the site saying during lockdown with the stay at home messaging. You know, maybe that is something that we should have had in hindsight.
Maybe just a simple graph that sort of shows where rates are regionally. So yeah. People see it looks quiet, but actually rates are going up, and I'll rethink my journey into town now.
Yeah.
And the other thing is, to me, the most important thing about the system initially was the video, and it was the fact that people go on and look at the video. But the other thing is counters, to count people so that you can then show how busy the town is at different times of the day. I always thought that was useful to see that the city centre is quiet on a Saturday morning between whatever the time it would be, to encourage people to spread their load a little bit and go in at different times. And I was wondering whether if some of the work that you're doing in trying to get businesses to engage and deliver? Are you trying to get businesses to deliver video feeds from their stores? Is that part of the thinking? Because I was wondering, like somebody like John Lewis might be willing to open up their camera to encourage people to come to John Lewis and maybe even to advertise, here's our quiet times.
Yeah,
So-
possibly. I mean, we haven't started that in any of that kind of engagement, but it's clear from the messages that come through, people want more images, but they want preferably indoor images.
Yeah, but the stores might be very keen in participating in that because it gives them a chance to show that their businesses are quiet and therefore you should be coming in and visiting them. So there might be some real engagement. The last comment, sorry, and I'll shut up, is around this idea of trying to build a portal to gather open source information. That I'm very skeptical about. I mean, Urban Observer does a fantastic job of collecting a whole variety of data, but this idea that we're going to create a portal of regional information and then lots of people are going to come along and build interesting apps and so on. Okay, lots of people have tried it. I'm just not convinced that's going to be a flyer, but okay.
Great, thanks. Has anybody else got their hands up? Any further questions? No, fantastic. Well, thank you all for joining us again. Hopefully you found it interesting and useful. If anybody's got anything following the session, just drop me a line. Obviously, I mentioned about the onboarding. We will be putting out a blog and some more content on that as well. And we'll have another show and tell to share some more information with you in over the next few weeks. So keep an eye out for that as well. Great, thanks everybody. Bye.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.